Okay. So we are on page 130 at the top section called the definite number. And this refers to why there are 6 paramitas and not more or less. In regard to the fact that all the teachings practiced by bodhisattvas can be included within the 3 trainings, there is the definite number of 6 paramitas. Generosity frees one from attachment to wealth, and that results in the perfect discipline. So first of all, we have to relinquish sufficient amount of attachment to our experience. And so as we begin to practice generosity, which doesn't just mean like giving physical things, right? But giving our time and energy and focus to others, this loosens up enough of our self-grasping that we can actually begin to have discipline. And the discipline being that we start to actually orient our lives around this practice. From that arises patience, because one thereby possesses the 4 attributes of a virtuous practitioner. So this means that you have, because you have had sufficient merit, you are able to withstand the difficulties, right? Because you've actually started to have enough insight into this process of karma and how benefiting others is actually how you find happiness for yourself. And once you start to see that, then you start to have a desire for virtue, which is when you truly begin to develop diligence, right? So you have to actually enjoy it and want it, and you'll be willing to tolerate difficulty because you know that it's worth it in the end. These 3 are included in the supreme training of discipline in terms of its cause, essence, and special quality. Dhyana is included within the supreme training of samadhi, and knowledge is included in the supreme training of knowledge, while diligence is a helper for them all. So let's see here. So in this context, discipline is restraint and right conduct, right? So this is not doing things that cause harm and doing things that benefit. All right, so this is what we do as a bodhisattva. We attempt to reduce actions that cause harm to sentient beings, and we increase actions that benefit sentient beings. In the Hinayana vehicle, we're solely focused on the restriction of harming, right? There's not as much emphasis on benefiting sentient beings in the Hinayana training, because first you have to have your mind sufficiently suffused with stability to be able to really begin that path. And that's in the, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana as a path structure, why that's laid out that way. Samadhi is meditative absorption. This, in the Dzogchen context, means your mind settles. You can stop and everything stops, right? So that's the development of samadhi in our context, not as much like the laser beam focus. Knowledge is insight, right? So we have that settled mind, that shamatha, for what reason, right? A meditative state is not for its own end, right? When you take a meditative state for the end, that leads to the formless realms, and through an attachment to bliss, clarity, and non-thought, seeing those as the aim rather than a method, or as a fruition, a temporary fruition based on our practices. But what we really need is we need that stability of mind so that we can have sufficient insight, and insight into what? Selflessness, right? Because once you have had insight into selflessness, then all of this other stuff comes together, because the self-grasping is the cause of all the suffering in samsara. And all of the methods from the Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and Dzogchen are all aimed at removing that self-grasping. They're working at different levels of subtlety, but that's the aim of every single one of them. So generosity frees you from attachment to wealth, which makes discipline possible. This is the cause of discipline, right? So first you have to have generosity. You have to have enough focus on others that you begin to consider your actions with this, oh, I should help others and not harm them. Discipline is the essence of training in discipline. So this is when we take discipline consciously on as something we're doing with ourselves. We're evaluating our actions through mindfulness and awareness and determining whether they are beneficial or non-beneficial and acting on that basis. Patience arises from discipline as its special quality. So as we understand what is good and what is not good, then we are willing to tolerate harm, not only from other sentient beings, but from difficult circumstances, recognizing that they are purifying us of our self-grasping. So now difficult circumstances become helpers instead of harm on the path. Then we have dhyana, which is the training in samadhi. And then we have knowledge, the training in knowledge. And this is in the Dharma context, foremost being insight into selflessness. Diligence is the helper from them all, right? So once we really know what we are after, we have bodhicitta. and we know what we want to avoid, we have discipline, then once we have that understanding, then we have a joy in that activity. And the more joy we have, that's diligence. And the more diligence we have, the more all of the other paramitas will increase. So here it also mentioned the 4 attributes of a virtuous practitioner. There, do not return anger for anger. Do not return insult for insult. Do not return accusation for accusation. Do not return blow for blow. So that you can see these are progressive. So first, when somebody treats you with anger, you don't get angry. You see them as acting, you see them as under the driving force of a poison. So you don't take it personally. You also have, if you have Dzogchen, then you have some insight into the fact that it's just empty sound, right? Empty sounds and empty appearances, and we don't need to attach to it. And when they insult us and say something that stings, we don't insult them back. We take the hit, right? We just let it and we go, oh, thank you. You just, weakened my self-grasping. We don't turn accusation for accusation. This is difficult because accusations tend to have some truth to them, and they also have a public face, right? So we worry a lot about a reputation, but Buddhism says we need to not worry about a reputation. Desire for fame and a good reputation is one of the main traps, in fact, of samsara. And do not return blow for blow. Obviously, when physical violence ever occurs, then if you are able to do these other 3, then eventually you'll be able to take physical violence without retaliating. These 3 are included in the supreme training of discipline in terms of cause, essence, and special quality. Dhyana is included in the supreme training of samadhi, and knowledge is included in the supreme training of knowledge, while diligence is a helper for them all. The ornament of sutra states that the way of practice, the generosity of not having expectation. So, right, these are going to list the things that kill the paramitas, right? So generosity, when has an expectation, kills the generosity, right? It's no longer generosity, it's a kind of trade. Discipline, not desiring rebirth. You're not performing discipline solely with the attempt to have a higher rebirth. That will kill your discipline and turn it into just an ordinary worldly activity. Patience towards everything. That means we don't have patience for some and no patience for others, right? We have patience equally. The diligence of cultivating all virtues. This means that we delight in all virtuous activity, and we don't pick and choose which ones we are willing to do and which ones we're not. We take the whole Buddhist instruction, right? We take the Hinayana methods, the Mahayana methods, and the Vajrayana methods, and we realize that they're built one on top of the other, foundational, right, up to pinnacle. We're not, I do this, but I don't do that, right? That's not how the path is practiced. And the Dhyana, that is not the formless states, right? So this is we're not attaching to a meditative concentration that is just for its own sake. We are using the settled mind of shamatha in order to apply the eye of insight into selflessness and other truths of the path. And the knowledge endowed with skillful means. This means that we recognize what is beneficial in particular contexts, right? Skillful means is really important because what is helpful in one situation isn't necessarily helpful in another situation. So we need to have a wide array of skills and tools at our disposal, and then we need to know how to use them appropriately, right? And that's really what knowledge is. It's how to be a bodhisattva. Do you ever meet those people who they kind of have their virtuous agenda, and although they are well-meaning, they kind of beat everybody with the hammer of their virtuous agenda, and then it actually makes people turned off by that virtue, right? I think a lot of what you see in our country now is a retaliation to that kind of activity, right? When you're trying to push a certain kind of virtue onto everybody else, then it just becomes distasteful, and then people actually be like, I'll be non-virtuous just to say F you to them, right? It's a kind of retaliation. And I see this a lot. So we need to have know how to use the tool skillfully. What can that person hear? What's going to actually help them in this moment, right? People grow by 1% in any given moment. They don't transform by 50%, right? So if you're trying to help somebody and you're talking to them in a conversation and they're here and you want to get them here, you don't try to go here. You try to go one notch up, right? You just try to nudge them a little bit further, make their thinking a little bit wider, their heart a little bit bigger. This is the skillful way to work with people, right? We don't try and push push them into something so far away that they go, that's totally out of my picture. And then they just, like I said, again, collapse into their position even stronger. And this is not helpful. Thus, those who adhere to these paramitas should practice them perfectly. They should all be put into practice while also possessing the 6 excellences. The excellent support is to possess bodhicitta. The excellent object is to be without partiality and generosity and so forth, but to embrace all objects. The excellent pursuit is to exert oneself for the welfare of all sentient beings, not some. The excellent skillful means is to embrace the action with the knowledge that does not conceptualize the 3 spheres. This is, remember, the one who is giving, the one who's receiving, and the object being given. In the case of generosity, we don't grasp onto that, right? Because that fixates it. The excellent dedication is to dedicate towards unexcelled enlightenment. And so, yeah, I've been thinking about this. It's more, we're not just saying the words, may this lead to enlightenment, or I dedicate this to all sentient beings, right? It's really easy for those words to become hollow. We say them constantly, and they can almost mean absolutely nothing. What does it mean? It means that we actually know that everything in our life is pointed in this direction. We're not aiming our lives towards a house in the Bahamas. We're not aiming our life towards, a certain state of mental happiness. We're not orienting our life towards peace and comfort. We're not orienting our life towards the development of a career. We're orienting every one of those things, even if we do them, to benefit all sentient beings, right? So we're just trying to make sure that our view is as big as possible, and that we're, it's like that saying of shoot for the stars and maybe you'll hit the moon, right? Bodhicitta is a very powerful thing because it's unattainable. It's a compass, right? It just keeps you moving in the direction of continuous benefit without ever thinking, I've made it, I'm done now, I can stop. Because that's a real danger, right? The big part of the Dharma is just to keep going. Keep going and keep going. And, in Zen, they say the path is endless, may I attain it all, right? Like that sort of thing. So this willingness to not settle for temporary steps along the way, right? We will have moments of clarity and insight, spiritual experiences, but as you've noticed, they all pass, right? So you got to just keep going. And this, when you dedicate yourself to bodhicitta, it's really helpful because if we keep getting stuck on this idea that we're going to attain something, then we keep getting disappointed, and that can lead to frustration with the path. We need to really engender in ourselves this willingness to just go and not think about an end, one moment at a time, because that's, the profound point in Dzogchen is that it is in this moment, right? Buddhahood is in this moment, but you have to keep doing it. You don't get to stop doing it. There's no point at which you are done. It doesn't just like, oh, now I'm present and I never have to do it again. We have to keep doing it. We have to keep being in the Buddhahood of now. And that's how we actualize the Buddhahood on the outer level more and more and more, by doing it moment to moment to moment. But that moment to moment thing, as far as I can tell, it doesn't ever end, right? A Buddha just does that without the effort, right? The effort part is the contraction part. And when that's completely released, then the path still continues, but it for them, it's just a continuous outflow of benefit with no effort required, right? That's its nature, right? And that's what we're trying to come to the realization of, is that it's our nature to be of continuous benefit to all beings. That's actually who we are. And the excellent purity is to practice as a direct remedy for the 2 obscurations. So we have the obscurations of the mental afflictions and poisons, and the obscurations to knowledge, right? So we have these 2 things that are preventing us from being Buddhas, and they're basically, what we deal with every day, right? Our emotional difficulties, our distracting thoughts and activities and habits, and also the fact that we don't really get it. Because if we really got it, then we'd be Buddhas, right? There's deep levels of belief in ourself that have to be undone. And the whole system of the Buddha Dharma is designed to bring an upheaval to all of that ignorance at the deepest levels. But you'll recognize that even though you've done it at coarse levels of mind, it still persists, right? The dream continues. And so that means that we really need to understand that there are deep, deep-seated levels of consciousness that we're not aware of, that we are working on. And when we work with the deep visualization of the Yidam, the energy practices, and Trekcha in a deep way, then we're working at these very subtle levels of mind that are not really, you can't really talk about it. You don't even really experience it in some ways, right? They're like, it's just subtle opening and softening. And that's why in a lot of ways you don't know how you're doing on the path. The masters all say, how do you know when you're doing well on the path? Bodhicitta, compassion, and devotion are increasing. That's how you know. There's no other way to know. It's not how refined your meditation is. It's not your glorious moments of deep insight. It's in the real world. How patient are you? How kind are you? How devoted are you? How dedicated to the path are you? These things are where the rubber meets the road. And you'll notice that they don't come very quickly, right? Like it's a long haul. We can have very nice experience on the cushion and on retreat and this sorts of thing, and then realize that we're still pretty ordinary when we meet the conflicts of everyday life. And this is showing us that we still have work to do, right? We still have to keep going. So that's the end for the paramitas, which is how you benefit yourself. First, you have to, and isn't it interesting that generosity and all of this is how you benefit yourself? The way of the Bodhisattva says this directly. All the suffering in the world is caused by desiring happiness for yourself, and all the happiness in the world comes about through desiring happiness for others. That's actually how it is. That's not a statement or a virtuous practice. That's actually a statement of how it works, because self-grasping is the cause of all of our suffering. And when we're focused on others, we don't have self-grasping. So recognizing that this whole bodhisattva path is how you liberate yourself, right? You benefit. So you don't have, like, even though we were working to benefit others, we don't need to worry so much about, like, am I benefiting them, right? Because you can't really, right? You recognize this too, like as non-Buddhas, it's hard to bring benefit to others. Samsaric beings are not interested in your help for the most part, right? Even if you give them a meal for today, they'll be hungry tomorrow, right? There's so little we can do. But what this is saying is it's not really about them, it's about you. It's about liberating you, because once you are a Buddha, once that continual outflow happens, once there's no more self-contraction, then you'll be able to benefit beings. And that's the next section we're coming into. Does anybody have any questions about the 6 paramitas before we move on?
Damien,
Yeah. Hi.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a comment.
Yeah.
Tonight, when I was reading the material that you sent, it's so pithy and so dense. I'm going to be reading, rereading, listening, and listening tonight is such a it's such a blessing to me. So I just wanted to share that. It's so pithy.
Yeah.
It's so dense, but it's so simple too. But anyway, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. No, as I've said many times in these sessions, the 6 paramitas in the way of the Bodhisattva, on some level, we all kind of go, yeah, give me the Dzogchen Vajrayana, right? Like, I know I do this, right? But when every time I go back, I'm like, it's so applicable, it's so deep, and I recognize I still have a lot of work to do, right? These,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so,
I do. But also it is Dzogchen.
yeah,
To
that's
me, it's like that expanse is and that awareness. It then goes into the Dzogchen. For me, I don't know, but
totally. And that's the way this book teaches it, right? We want to connect the two. We want to do the way of the Bodhisattva with a Dzogchen attitude, which causes it not to be so stressful, right? We want to
oh,
bring the effortlessness to our effort. Then we become kind of like, Kung Fu masters, right? Like effortless effort. We become capable of engaging in Bodhisattva training without getting overwhelmed, strained. That's why when, the Mahayana, when people practice just at the Mahayana Sutrayana level only, and then don't have the Dzogchen instructions, it can take eons, is what it says, because they're trying to take their their ordinary mind, and make it into a bodhisattva, right? That's impossible next to, right? Like it's possible, but it's very difficult. You have to change each little habit one by one by one. But when you have the devotion and the connection to our nature through the blessing of our lineage, then you're able to be directly in the goal in any given moment, and then come back and work the steps, right? So we can keep
Ah,
going. We don't have to put the goal off to some future time. We can be in the goal right now through recognition, but then we can also continue to do our work helping beings and transforming our body mind into something of use, right? So it's so powerful.
it is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So one last thing, it mentioned the six excellences on page 130 and 131. So they're a list to accompany each paramita. So the excellent support is possessing bodhicitta. That means we have to have full and complete Buddhahood in mind as our aim. The excellent object, impartiality. We do it towards all beings, whether we like them or we don't, and or all situations, whether we like them or we don't. Excellent pursuit, exertion for the welfare of sentient beings. Excellent skillful means, the knowledge that does not conceptualize the three spheres, right? So we're not attaching to self, other, and what we're doing or giving. Excellent dedication, dedicate towards unexcelled enlightenment, and excellent purity, practice as a direct remedy for the two obscurations. So the three spheres, again, action, actor, and recipient, or giver, given, gift, and receiver, not grasping at them as truly existent, right? We see everything as empty. The two obscurations, obscuration of disturbing emotions, and the cognitive obscurations of dualistic fixation, as I mentioned. So now on to training in the four means of attraction to ripening others. So once you have developed the six paramitas sufficiently to the point where you have some level of accomplishment, then you can begin the training in the four means of attracting to ripen others. This is basically how you become a lama, right? So we're recognizing that that is the aim for all of us in this life or the next, right? We're trying to become spiritual teachers, capable of benefiting beings. And as we have the view that our teachers are Buddhas, then we can recognize that we're also working towards that goal. The Lamrim Yeshe Nyingpo root text says, having ripened your own being, gather followers through generosity, delight them with pleasing words, and comfort them by being consistent. Through counseling them in meaningful conduct, fully establish them temporarily and ultimately in the splendor of benefit and well-being. So gathering through generosity. So how do we make a connection to beings in general in life? We make it through giving, right? If you want to make friends, little kids know this. They come up and like give somebody a toy, or it's the most basic way to make a connection to somebody. Karmic link is made when there's an exchange of energy, of effort, of benefit. So you begin by actually giving to others in whatever ways they want, whatever they need, whatever is helpful. This is establishing a connection between you and them. And because you have imbued yourself with the six paramitas, they're making a connection to the Dharma through you. So don't, yes, do not be in a hurry to become a lama. That is not what I'm suggesting. But you can recognize that you're starting to do this whether you like it or not, right? Because as Joe often says, many people, you're the only Buddhist they know, right? Or they recognize you as this. So you are representative to the Dharma for them. So you want to make sure that you're a good representative of the Dharma. The Tibetans probably couldn't fathom the number of people we connect to, right? Like social media and all of this. Like we are making an impression of ourselves to so many sentient beings all the time. And the people you see every day at work, etc., passing on the street. So delight them with pleasing words, be kind, be gentle, comfort them by being consistent. Don't do things you say not to do, right? This is hard. Actually walk the walk, right? We need to practice the Dharma. And that's why I recognize, like, even though we can have insight into higher levels of knowledge where we would know that good and bad, we're moving beyond good and bad and these concepts, and recognizing that so many of what are considered morals are really just social constructs. Even though you have insight into that, in general, we want to abide by our social standards of our time and place because that's what's acceptable to people around you. And when you act outside of it, even if you're beyond it, they're not. Right. And so all you're doing is making a bad name for the Dharma. Right. And we've seen this happen before. So be consistent with the Dharma. This is to protect you, to protect them, to protect the Dharma. Just by being a simple, ordinary, good person, you'll be fine. Through counseling them in meaningful conduct, fully establish them temporarily and ultimately in the splendor of benefit and well being. And what does this mean? Teach them karma, right? Without using the word in America, right? I would avoid using the word in general unless they're Buddhist or Hindu or really open to those things. Um, Talk to them about how their actions have results for them and how the conditions in their lives are the results of their own actions and thoughts and perceptions, and being able to just in general notice this, talk about this, and explain it to people, right? Like you can do this in really subtle ways, careful ways, just about being a good person, right? Like, no, how does the Dalai Lama talk? Does he talk about the highest levels of Madhyamaka? No, he talks about being kind all the time, right? This is why, because that's the most important thing that for basic level, right? But until you have the basic level of kindness, generosity, then the Dharma can't even begin. So you want to help people get there. So whatever that means, and generally that's acceptable, right? People, almost everybody likes kindness and the idea of kindness, most people. Um, so you can encourage kindness by being kind and praising others when they're kind and helping that flourish, right? This is teaching them karma, right? And talking about how my mom was one of my first Bodhisattva teachers, when I was a kid and I would come home from school and be, this kid, such an idiot, he's doing this and this. And my mom would always say, well, you don't know what his family life is like. You don't know what he's been through. You don't know the difficulties he's facing. And though she didn't know anything about karma, she was explaining to me karma, that I would recognize that these people who are acting in a negative way are acting in a negative way due to their circumstances, situations, and conditions. And that may not talk about mainstream level karma, right? But we're just talking about how people are the product of our environment, right? We can look at so many difficult people in our world today and recognize that they are the product of a corrupt social system, a corrupt upbringing, a corrupt many things, right? So recognizing those causes and conditions loosens and diffuses aggression and judgment and helps us all get along better, right? When we all are more understanding and are patient with people and recognize that, the things that divide us are less than the things that are in common, right? That we really have more in common than we do not in common. And focusing on those things and focusing on reminding yourself and reminding others that people who are having a hard time usually are for a reason, right? And so that opens us up and softens us and helps us see with compassion. What does compassion mean? To feel with, right? So when we are able to feel what they're feeling, because we all have been done things we regret, right? And done things because of our circumstances. And, we can tell a story about why that's so. And for ourselves, maybe that's not so useful, giving ourselves excuses, but it's good for others for you to look that way and to be recognized that they are the product of their environment and circumstances. And most of them are almost completely unconscious. They literally have no autonomy over themselves, right? Because they don't even recognize that that's a possibility. They feel a victim to their circumstance, right? So they don't recognize that they have agency to begin moving this ship, because karma is subtle and takes a long time, right? You've noticed it takes a lot of work and time to change the patterning, the deep-seated patterning we all have. Much less somebody who doesn't have access to the Dharma. Their mind's not open to it. They haven't been taught it. So how can we expect them to act positively? Really, they almost all see, oh, I have to be this way or I will get destroyed. Is their feeling inside, right? They have fear, and so they have aggression as a method to protect themselves. And so we need to see this, and we can help others see it. And this will make us all more patient and kind. Having fully ripened your being by training in the practices of application, you must now bring others to maturity. The four means of attraction are the chief of all techniques or methods for that, and the ornament of sutra states to speak pleasantly, act meaningfully, and to be consistent with the meaning. That is regarded as being in harmony with generosity, giving teaching, and applying it, and following it oneself. In that way, the order and number have been taught, and they are called the four means of attraction because of being the means for bringing benefit, because of accepting and causing to enter, and likewise because of causing to follow. So what are we trying to attract followers? No, we're trying to attract people to the Dharma. And does that even mean attract them to Buddhism? No, we're trying to attract them to the truth, to love and compassion and awareness. We're trying to attract them to that. And they can find parts of that in good old grandmother kindness, in Christianity, in Islam, in logic. There are many different ways that you can appeal to people and their ethics and social harmony and whatever religion they practice. So we can appeal to those things in gentle ways, right? But always, always check how it will land before you say something. Really try to feel, how are they going to hear this? And will they hear it? Will it just sound like judgment, or will it sound like something helpful? And so that's what we like, if you were them, what would be helpful? What would you want to hear? What would be actually help you move into a more positive place? These are the sort of things we should ask ourselves, right? They have that saying, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Right? Before you say anything, this is really it, right? Mostly keep your mouth shut. If you're going to say something, make sure, is it kind? Is it helpful? And is it needed? And that will really clarify a lot of this. Thus have their purpose, literal meaning, and so on, been extensively taught. In a similar way, the Lotus Mound advises, agreeably beckon them with the fan of generosity, welcome them with pleasantly spoken words, make them at ease with meaningful action, and give them consistent advice. So, give them whatever they need, whether it be words of advice or gas in their car or $5 or a meal to eat. When you see somebody who has a need, you give it to them without worrying about it. And as Dzogchen Rinpoche said, if you're giving to homeless people and you're worried they're going to go spend it on drugs or alcohol, mostly that's not up to you, right? It's up to us to be generous. So we should just be generous. And if we can be generous in a more helpful way, then we should do that. But sometimes we're just generous and we don't have to have a lot of explanation for it. And you can recognize, as I said before, that when you give somebody $5 or a meal, you're not just giving them that $5 a meal, you're making a connection to them and the Dharma, because you are now the Dharma, right? The Dharma is part of who you are. Dzogchen practitioners, they say, are actually liberation through seeing. So if we're in the nature of our mind and we're practicing, then we become liberation through seeing. And so this is, for Dzogchen Rinpoche, you see his main activity of generosity is these things, right? He gives empowerments, he gives teachings, he gives those stickers that have liberation through seeing. He wears liberation through seeing t-shirts. He gives out mani pills to people. He's trying to give the Dharma through connections. And so this is very interesting and a very profound and wise way to benefit people, right? Because they don't even know you're doing it, which is some of the best, right? You're just making a connection and not worrying so much about where that's going to go. You're trusting karmic cause and effect and the connection to the Dharma to just ripen for them when it ripens for them. So you can just make that connection by wearing those t-shirts that he makes, putting the sticker on your car, whatever you want to do to help people make a connection to the Dharma. That's one way to do it. And then, speak to them kindly, make them feel good with your words, try to help people feel better and be happy generally. As this teaching shows how to apply them, first of all is to attract by means of giving any suitable materials to worthy recipients who have not gathered among your followers. After they have been gathered, you should inspire them into the paths of emancipation and omniscience by the means of uttering pleasant words, talk that is relevant and becoming to their minds. So in this case, like I said, if you're not becoming a lama, then it's just the people who are around you, the people you see all the time, the people you work with, your family, etc. Those are the people you've attracted to you, right? So now you're trying to utter pleasing words, give them things that make them happy, and uplift their minds with the Dharma at whatever level is helpful. in order to prevent those who have thus been inspired from falling back again, but to make them follow yourself and encourage them. You should comfort them by being tireless in acting consistently and without contradicting the meaning of the teachings that you have explained to others. And like for if you're married or at home, you know how hard this is, right? When people are around you 24 hours a day and raising 2 3 little kids and like trying to be consistently happy and helpful all the time, yeah, I'm not there. So I have more bodhisattva work to do. In accordance with the different lower, medium, or superior dispositions and faculties of the disciples, teach them the individual Dharma doors of the greater and lesser vehicles, counseling them in a permanent goal of engaging in meaningful conduct. So, once again, the 4 are generosity, give suitable materials, pleasing words, words that are relevant and helpful and appealing to their minds in the language they can understand. Consistency means that we keep our conduct in line with what we say. Meaningful conduct, we teach them according to the lower, medium, or superior disposition. This means, basic kindness for most people, and then progressively up as necessary. Generosity brings temporary and lasting benefit. Pleasing words are what accept and gather disciples. Meaningful action is what causes them to enter the path, and consistency is what causes them to follow the conduct of the bodhisattvas. They don't lose faith because they see, like when you see spiritual teachers or whatever, and they do something awful, people leave the Dharma because of that. That's why that's so bad. Even if the action maybe could be understood on some level, if it causes people to leave the Dharma, then it wasn't a good action, right? So we want to just avoid those things. All 4 condense into 2, giving material things and Dharma, and by these 2, you establish beings in immediate benefit and lasting well-being. These 4 can, in short, be condensed to generosity, material things, and the teachings, and by means of these 2, you should fully establish all beings, both temporarily and ultimately, in the splendor of immediate benefit and lasting happiness. So now we're going to step into the actual how-to manual for post-meditation. This is the way of mind training, or lojong, condensing these practices to their essence. The Lamrim Yeshe Nyingpo root text says, as the essential point, take upon yourself the burden of all the miseries of sentient beings. Give away all your happiness and virtue to the 6 classes of beings, and train in compassion and bodhicitta without being carried away by difficulties. That right there is the whole Dharma, right? So we are practicing dealing with whatever difficulties come to us, right? And when others experience difficulty, we try to take it from them one way or another. Be willing to experience your suffering, their suffering, all suffering. You're open to it, you're willing to deal with any difficulty because you have the Dharma. You have recognized the nature of your mind. They have not. You are capable of enduring more than they are. So you should be willing to take on theirs because you have this extraordinary resource that they don't have. And then we should practice, giving away. So whenever we experience anything positive, we should think about others having it also. Rejoice in their having it. Wish that they have it. Actually give it to them if you can. But this all boils down to Tonglen practice, right? So which is the most useful of all practices because you can do it anytime, anywhere, and it's completely secret and doesn't require anything except for the fact that you're still alive and breathing. And all you do is just visualize that you breathe in all the suffering and roots of that suffering. That means the causes of their negative karma onto yourself, into your heart. You bring it in and dissolve it into your heart. And you breathe out all the merit and all your Buddhist practice and all the Dharma and all your good conditions and give it to them. And we just let that ride on your breath continuously all the time. But especially when you notice that you're irritated, you're suffering, or you see somebody else suffering, or you're happy, or you see somebody else happy. These are the times to especially practice it. And this actually has a physiological basis. When we are experiencing addiction and attachment, we inhale more than we exhale. And when we're experiencing aggression and annoyance, we exhale more than we inhale, right? We're pushing away subtly or pulling in subtly. And this is physiologically happening. And by doing this visualization, you're reversing that tendency. and it feels slightly uncomfortable, right? We don't really, there's a slight to it, right? You're breathing in this black exhaust and you're giving away all the light you have. That's not so comfortable. But that's exactly the point. That feeling of discomfort is your self grasping. You're actually touching the root of samsara with this practice. That's why this practice alone could liberate you completely from samsara. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche said it was his main practice. He did it all day, right? So even if you're not on the cushion or in retreat, it's a way that you can really transform your life into practice. Thank you. I'm glad that was helpful. And Garchen Rinpoche has the Dzogchen aspect, right? So then you can take it to the higher level. I suggest you practice this regular version first and a lot. Then you can do the Dzogchen method, which is just to notice their suffering, feel the suffering, and then rest in the nature of mind, liberating that suffering for both you and them. So, and you can also do this for pleasant things, right? So you experience something positive, you experience their happiness, and then you rest in the nature of mind. It's removing the self-grasping. But unless you're quite adept at recognizing the nature of mind and actually capable of like really dropping, this graspy thing, then Tonglen is very helpful for practicing this muscle of releasing, right? This letting go of attachment and the not pushing away. So get trained with the muscle, then you can just drop, And so if you practice a lot of guru yoga, etc., and you're very good at just dropping, then you can do the Garchen method. You can just drop it. But if you feel like it doesn't really like release at a deep level in you, then do the sending and taking. Condensing all the Bodhisattva practices to their essential points, there are 3 topics: to train in the cause, cultivate deep felt love and compassion; to train in the actual attitude, arouse bodhicitta throughout the 6 periods of day and night. And these are actual periods of time. Some people, great masters, actually wake up several times through the night and reestablish their bodhicitta and their vows and all of this. This is very profound and amazing. To train in the conduct, exert yourself one-pointedly in dedicating the virtue to the welfare of others and in giving them your happiness and taking their suffering upon yourself. And how amazing that all of this complexity through the 6 paramitas can be done with this simple visualization, right? So the generosity is the giving away. The patience is enduring the discomfort. The diligence is keep applying the practice, or the discipline. And the diligence is taking joy and delight in doing the practice. And then you have the shamatha, which is clearly visualizing it, the dhyana, which is being stable in your visualization. And then the insight is to do it all in emptiness, right? To not be fixated on self and other, that it's just a flow and you're not really strongly attaching me and them and the virtue and the suffering, and we're exchanging it like currency, like not like that, right? It's a fluid activity in emptiness. And so you bring your Dzogchen view to this breathing exercise and you just allow this visualization to gently float on there. For me, I have to actually touch the pain a little bit and touch the pleasure. I'm a person who don't experience emotion deeply. Some people experience a lot of emotion and they just feel everything. I have to actually like kind of open to the thing, right? Like I have to like put myself in it a little bit and like, oh, okay, now I got it. And then I hook my feeling to the happiness of the pain. But other people, they feel it right away. So do what works for you, but you want to make sure that you're in touch with the suffering and the happiness. That's the main thing. Even if but you want it to be a light touch, not a clunky exchange. About this, Shantideva said, one who desires to quickly protect himself as well as all others should practice the secret excellence of exchanging himself for others. In this way, practicing the profound mind training of exchanging yourself with others is essential. The reason for this is, as he has said, whatever happiness exists in the world, all results from wishing others to be happy. Whatever suffering exists in the world, all results from desiring happiness for oneself. So if you want to take this on as a path, then I highly recommend you buy the book, The Great Path of Awakening. It's a short tiny little text translated by Ken McLeod by Jamgon Kongtrul, and it's this 7-point mind training system. And it includes Guru Yoga and Tonglen and all the mind training slogans. And it's so simple, so easy to practice. The other way is the 37 practice of the Bodhisattva, which Garjin Rinpoche taught. That's also excellent. So it's good to have a basis of training in one of these mind training systems and have that in your tool belt. It's really worth the effort. Furthermore, he said, without fully exchanging your happiness for suffering of others, you will not accomplish Buddhahood and find no happiness in samsara. In this way, it has been taught both directly and in terms of the opposite. The point is also mentioned like this: give gain and victory to others, take loss and defeat upon yourself. And this one is really helpful, right? So in the modern world, in the West, if you can find like a lot of suffering online and that sort of thing, but in your day-to-day life, mostly, unless you work in a hospital or something, you're not encountering tons and tons of suffering. But I bet you are experiencing loss and gain. That is a huge thing, right? Like seeing some people become very, very wealthy, some people losing everything, you losing everything, you getting something, you winning, them losing. All of the thoughts of victory that we have in our lives. This is the very core of self-grasping, right? It wants to win, right? And this is very subtle. One instruction Ken McLeod gave, he said, play board games or sports and lose, but you can't tell anybody you're doing it, right? So you have to like make them think you're playing and try to play and let them win. This is a good practice, right? So especially if you get real competitive, very good training. In accordance with the meaning of this, without hesitation, form the intention to happily and joyfully take upon yourself the burden of all karmic deeds and disturbing emotions. Pema Chodron and Trogam Trungpa both talked about this, that actually at the core of our self-grasping, what we're most attached to is our good karma, right? We're attached to our merit and our spiritual progress. This is the thing that we are grasping onto the most tightly because we know all of our good conditions come from it. But it also is the cause of samsara. It's the reason we're not getting out because we're still trying to do this path for ourselves. I don't know how many times I've had the revelation that I'm not even on the Bodhisattva Dhyana. My path is still for me, right? Like, am I really practicing for others? Really? I'm still practicing for myself. And, like, what would it be like that your every action all day long was just for others? It's a whole nother game, right? A whole nother level. And when we talk about Vajrayana and Dzogchen, fantastic. Their skillful means, their methods, but we have to ask ourselves, are we really even a bodhisattva yet? That, for me, I don't like the answer to that question. So you take upon their karmic deeds and disturbing emotions, the causes accumulated since beginningless time that exists in the mind stream of sentient beings pervading space who have been your mothers, as well as all their painful sensations of body and mind, the results. This is the willingness to go last. I take on all. I'm not willing to attain enlightenment while they suffer. I'm not willing to have ultimate happiness while they suffer. If I have to stay here for countless eons, I will. That attitude is a whole different mindset, right? Because you're not even concerned. But the magic is it actually is the thing that will liberate you, right? Because you're actually forgotten about yourself completely. That is a incredible thing to achieve. And to remember that they've all been your mother and your child. They've taken care of you. They've fed you. They've guarded you from predators. They have given everything. Anybody who's a mother or a parent knows the suffering parents go through on behalf of their children. How could you let a single one of your mothers continue in samsara while you achieve some kind of spiritual realization and peace? Right? We shouldn't be comfortable with that. That should make us very uncomfortable. And if we take that to heart, then we'll really take Tonglen and these practices seriously. The 6 paramitas will really be, I have work to do, right? I really need to shift this orientation. The good news is if you shift your orientation to others, then you've done it, right? So that simple turn of mind, that simple identification with others instead of identification with yourself is the switch that needs to be flipped so that everything else in the path can fall into place. All of your self-grasping is removed because the spiritual self-grasping is the most pernicious, the most difficult to uproot, right? We can be on that for a long time, right? Because it feels good, seems like we're doing a good job. We have a fair amount of good karma, so things aren't terrible. But is it total liberation? These are the dangers, right? We face the danger of feeling we've got it, but when death comes, we'll find out the answer to that question, right? Because there's a real difference between somebody who's a bodhisattva and who's not. Next, form the intention to give completely all the wholesome roots of virtue accumulated since beginningless time that exist in your own mind stream, as well as the pleasant sensations of body and mind, their results to each of the sentient beings in the 6 kinds of transmigration. The 7 points of mind training teaches about this. Train alternately in the 2 aspects of giving and taking. These 2 should ride the breath. Thus put them into practice. Whatever happens, such as good or bad health, joy or sorrow, high or low status, you should don the great armor of not being carried away by difficulties. Train one pointedly in conventional bodhicitta with compassion as its basis, and when it has arisen, stabilize and increase it. This is amazing. Like Marie pointed out, it's so incredible to really think about what it means to put others before yourself, and that this simple practice of Tonglen can uproot all of this difficult stuff because it works on a subtle level of mind, right? And we integrate it with the rest of our stuff. I'm not saying give up all the other practices, but all of those times of difficulty in your life and all the times of pleasure in your life are opportunities to undo your self-grasping by thinking about the opposite, right? Normally we think, ooh, this is great. Can I keep it? But instead of doing that, this is great. May you have it. And then, oh, this is horrible. Can I go away? Oh, this is horrible. Come here. That shift will change how you relate to your whole life, will change how you relate to every person, every difficult circumstance, and will uproot the very roots of samsara, right? So this is not a beginner's practice. Recognize like these are given really broadly now and openly, but Tonglen actually was an extremely secret practice for a long time. Atisha had to hunt down one of the last practitioners of it, if not the last practitioner, in order to bring this to Tibet, right? Like this is incredible. It was only mouth to ear based practices before it became the 7-point mind training, and then on to the 37 practices, the Bodhisattva, etc. There's a reason all the lamas hammer on this. And it's as I just explained, because if we skip to the higher level practices without having undone this, then the ego has hijacked our practice, right? It's turned it into one of the slogans is don't make gods into a demon, right? Don't turn Dharma into a servant of your ego, right? And Trungpa Rinpoche saw this. And he said spiritual materialism is the main problem in the West. And his book on it's incredible. I recommend everybody read it. We all do it, right? We all turn this into ego gratifying work because of course we do, right? Well, that's our orientation. But here is the method for uprooting it. So don't let it slip you by. It's fantastic, amazing, so simple, so easy. You have the whole instruction already. You don't even need anything else. If you just applied that, you would be well on your way. So I highly recommend that. And as I said, do it in the view, right? So you have these instructions. The actual Great Path of Awakening lays out, it says, do Guru Yoga, then flash emptiness, which for us is to flash the view, and then do Tonglen. And let the Tonglen accompanied by a slogan. And the 2 slogans are the most useful: suffering to me, happiness to others, victory to others, loss to me, right? One of those 2, whichever one stings more, use that one. And you can make up your own, whatever way you can get to doing the opposite of what we always do all day. So we have just a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? comments, thoughts, feelings?
Every time, Damien, you just wring me inside out. I just want to just squeeze myself the opposite direction. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, these teachings are incredible. Like I am getting all the same thing you guys are getting, right? It's a wonderful excuse to go through this. And like I said, like realize like I still have so much work to do, but how amazing that we have these methods. How amazing that anybody even ever had that thought. I'm gonna take on everybody else's pain and give them all my happiness. Like what? Nobody thinks anything like that, right? Like it's so the opposite of what everyone all the time is doing. And it's amazing that anyone ever had that thought, much less a whole system of training in it. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And would fix all the world's problems. It really would. But thank you for being here every week. I really appreciate your consistency. Otherwise I would have to just like record these and post them on YouTube. So I really appreciate having people show up so that we can like engage in the material together, right? Because we get the kind of connections and then, the karmic powers multiplied like by exponentially by having people practice together. When we do this together as a sangha, sangha is not just like addition, it's exponential, right? So each extra person multiplies the power of this on all of us so that it like takes root. So thank you for being here and attending and being so consistent. We've had like 15 sessions, 15 weeks. That's a good, and we're still going, right? And we have a long way to go still. But it's amazing that we're sticking to this. And, so few people really go through all of this, right? Really get what the Tibetan tradition has to offer from the beginning to the end and really spend time understanding each piece. And this is an incredibly simplified version, believe it or not. So it's incredible. And I'm just so grateful to Guru Rinpoche for these teachings. I mean, it's just, and as he said, just a reminder at the beginning, these teachings are his mind. Like we're not just reading a book. We're in teachings straight from the nature of mind, straight from Guru Rinpoche. Like not ordinary words. Yeah. So it's amazing. I'm so grateful. Thank you, everybody. I bow to you, Buddhas to be. Bow to your Buddha nature. May we all accomplish this. May we all completely reverse our self-grasping. Be like Garchen Rinpoche. Be like Guru Rinpoche. May it be so. May it be so. May it be so. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, having defeated the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. Love you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will send the recording as soon as Joe sends it to me, and we will journey onwards. All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Much love to you. Guru
Thank you.
Rinpoche Day tomorrow. I don't know if we're doing a soak. I hope so. So I'll check in with Joe on that. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you, Damien. Yeah,
You just see him
awesome.
floating above my head. Good night.